Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you an easy way to add ink to your embossing folders. I'm going to use a variety of inks so you can use whatever you have on hand. Now there are many different techniques that you can do with embossing folders, but I'm just going to focus on the one today. So here's a look at the embossing folder that I'll be using. I'm using the same one throughout the entire video, and this is the embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. This is SEEDHEAD stems. You can see that it is kind of a thicker embossing folder. So I'm going to show you the sandwich that I use to do the embossing on cardstock. All of my cardstock I'm using today is going to be 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock. So I'll just show you real quick an impression to make on this. I'm just placing a piece of cardstock inside of my embossing folder that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just going to close that embossing folder and I'm bringing in my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cut machine. Now you may need to check with your manual what you need to use for a sandwich for your die cutting machine, but what I found worked really well is I have my platform, a metal shim, and then my embossing folder. And afterwards, I do actually add one more piece of cardstock on top for a little bit more extra shim, and that's going to give me just a little bit deeper of an impression. I'm going to bring this up close here as soon as my camera focuses in, and you can see the beautiful detail in this embossing folder. So the first inks that I'll be using on the embossing folder are going to be my Distress Oxide Inks. This is the first way that I started out applying the ink. I have a small rubber brayer here from Holtz, and I'm just rolling that across my squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink pad, and then rolling that over my embossing folder. The side of the embossing folder that I'm applying this ink to is the part that is more indented. If you feel your embossing folder, one side is raised and the other side is more of an indent. So this is the indented side. After I applied some of that squeezed lemonade, I'm just rubbing off any of that extra ink onto some scratch paper, and then I'm going to bring in KITSCH Flamingo. So I'm picking up that ink right off of the ink pad and then applying that ink onto that embossing folder. Next, I have Wilted Violet. Now, after that was done, I did bring in a bigger rubber brayer that I have and just went over that a little bit to help kind of smooth out those transitions a little bit. Once I have that done, I'm bringing in a piece of cardstock on the side that's raised, and then I can close my inked panel on top and run that through my Platinum 6. So you can see this is a very, very light pastel looking background, which is beautiful, but you're probably thinking, Mindy, you don't do pastel. But just wait, I do bump up my colors as the video progresses. So this time I'm using Gina K Designs ink, and I'm taking Key Lime, Tranquil Teal, and Wild Lilac. And I have my craft sheet here. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me why I would use the craft sheet off of my glass media mat, and this is one of the reasons. I love how I can see the colors of the ink, and the ink lays differently on top of this craft sheet than it does on the glass mat. So I really loved using that craft sheet to swipe my ink pads across on. Now, once I had that swiped on there, I'm going back over those colors to kind of blend them together with my rubber brayer and applying that over onto that embossing folder. Once again, placing in that piece of cardstock, I'll sandwich that together and run that through the die cut machine. And as you can see, my colors are slowly getting a little bit more vibrant. I just kept bumping up my colors a little bit more. And one thought that hit me is that Distress inks are more vibrant than oxides. So this time I'm bringing in Distress inks, and I am using Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, and Chipped Sapphire. So I'm kind of, you can see, blending between that Picked Raspberry and Wilted Violet, kind of blending them together and rolling that onto the embossing folder. I'll wipe off my rubber brayer off on the side onto scratch paper, and then go over that Wilted Violet and Chipped Sapphire and pick those two colors up together. I love using the rubber brayer for this because it's really easy to smooth out the transitions of the colors. Now, right now, I'm just creating a bunch of different backgrounds with various inks, and I will put these all into cards in just a moment at the end of the video here for you. So here you can see this has a beautiful blend to it as well, and I love how the embossing creates that white of those dandelions. I think that's just so beautiful how that pops out like that. Now this last combination that I'm using here is mustard seed, carved pumpkin, and barn door. Still using the rubber brayer and the Distress inks. And I will have one more technique here that I'm going to show you when applying ink. And I actually think it came out to be one of my favorites. So after I have these colors blended together, I'm going to sandwich in my cardstock. Now keep in mind, you could also use colored cardstock, which would be a really neat effect, but I really like the white of that Neenah Solar White underneath. I just love how the white pops out like that. All right, so the last way to apply ink this time is just going straight to the cardstock. So this is one of the panels I created back in the beginning. It was just a white panel of cardstock, and I'm bringing some color right onto those embossed areas or onto the entire card front. I started with Squeezed Lemonade, then I have KITSCH Flamingo. I'm going to bring in Wilted Violet and then Chipped Sapphire. So you can see this is definitely more of a me kind of card because it got pretty vibrant once I added in that Chipped Sapphire to really bump up the intensity of the card. And I love how it almost has kind of a halo effect around it. I didn't do that on purpose. That just kind of ended up how it was when I was ink blending. Now to do the sentiments on my cards, I am using this gorgeous spring bouquet stamp set. Yes, it has some beautiful images on here, but it has these beautiful sentiments as well. I love the script and the font on these, and I am just lining that up in my Misty tool and stamping it with VersaFine ink. Now these panels I had already trimmed down. Some of them are 3 3/4 by 5.5, and some of them are 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Now, also, I'm using another new stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and this one is a family headline. And I love how you can customize your message on these. So I have one here that says, from your favorite friend. This one is to my favorite sister. I only have one sister, so I'm going to have to send this to her. And I think it's hilarious because I'm her only sister. So I think these are great. Now, I think what really made the magic happen on these cards is this liquid Stardust from Lawn Fawn. I added a bunch onto my glass mat with a couple drops of water because I'm going to do all of my cards here. And I'm just mixing that liquid Stardust with the water to kind of loosen that up a little bit. And I'm going to just flick this all over the background. Now, after I did this first one, I did kind of wise up and I had grabbed a Post-it note to cover up my sentiment. I wanted that to stay the crisp black. I didn't want to have any speckles of that on there, but check this out. It is just so sparkly, especially on this darker background. It looks so magical. It could be either the look of the seeds floating off or just some magical sparkles in the background, but either way, I love how this came out. After I had that liquid Stardust all applied, I did go ahead and off screen attach everything to card bases. So all of my card sizes are going to be 4 1/4 by 5.5. And like I said, some of these I just left strips of white on the side. So that would be 3 3/4 by 5.5 inches. And some of them I did cut to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And they are layered onto that card base with white cardstock to add a little bit of dimension. And I'm just showing each card up close and how these beautiful speckles in the background with that liquid Stardust, how soft some of these colors came out to be. They're beautiful, beautiful backgrounds, and I loved applying the ink this way to these embossing folders and just how those dandelions just really pop off of the card. So there were a few ways and a few different types of inks that you can apply to embossing folders. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.